Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels just keep chopping wood with recruiting and the transfer portal. Let's talk about it here on Locked On Ole Miss.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Ole Miss. I'm Brian Smith, in for Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen each and every day. You can find us on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and everywhere else you get your podcasts. We are happy to have you here. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console is needed. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. We're going to talk about the college football playoff and a lot of different surrounding pieces towards the back half of the show. It'll be about half of it, give or take, maybe just a little more than that, because I have a lot to say. There's some budding discussions that really centralize itself on the SEC, and to be honest, it's directly related to Ole Miss. So we're going to dive into that quite a bit today. But first, I want to talk about a couple key recruits, circumstances that are going on with the state of Texas and Ole Miss, then kind of dive into the transfer portal, which ironically, there's a key Lone Star State player involved with that as I record on Tuesday night, and kind of finalize with it on thoughts about the portal and how Ole Miss is once again shifting its efforts, but making a lot of inroads on both the recruiting and transfer portal side of things. So let's start off with this. I'm reading through some different things, Ole Miss news today, collecting my notes like I always do. And a guy that I didn't think I'd really run into again on the recruiting trail, and I may not unless I see him at one of the All-Star games, but his name is Chase Calicut. Plays at North Shore High School just outside of Houston, one of the most famous public school programs in the country. They're always in the Texas High School Football State Championship run. They've had kids go to every school in the country to play in some capacity. Every SEC school stops in there when they go to Houston. Elite program, period. And he's a kid that played for SFE in South Florida. It's arguably the best 7-on-7 program over the last 5 years. It's certainly in the conversation. With that being stated, I didn't know it, but Chase announced that it's not Texas that leads for him. Ole Miss right now is the school at the top along with Washington. Part of that is it's just unique that a kid from Houston would have Washington in his final three or whatever, but for either one of them to be ahead of Texas the way Texas is rolling, that's impressive in multiple ways. Number one, Ole Miss is an offensive program till otherwise proven. I know last year was a bit of an anomaly, but Lane's an offensive guy. Chase is a DB and a long and athletic one. I think in certain schemes he can play corner, he can play free safety, and others, whatever, he's an elite DB, top 200 kind of kid. Ole Miss getting top guys out of Texas, we're starting to see that trend, especially in the Dallas area. But again, this kid lives just outside of Houston. If the Rebels can continue to get players out of Texas, especially these guys, maybe some East Texas kids too, really talented, some of those small schools out there in East Texas like Tyler and Longview. But if they can get just a few of those to go with the kids they get from Memphis, New Orleans, and of course, from the state of Mississippi, you're going to rely on the portal a lot less. Texas high school football has been, is, and will be elite. Calicut's going to go somewhere and play. You can't teach 6'2", 180, 190 pounds. You can't teach his change of direction. Can't teach his speed. And again, Texas is wanting this kid. What does that tell you? The secondary that Texas just had, do you think they know what they're doing? But Ole Miss just had him on campus. He loved the visit. They got a great shot. This is a great trend. Forget the whole situation. It's just about Texas in general first. Ole Miss is getting 2 or 3 kids, and that extends to Lacey, like the transfer from Missouri, who's from the greater Dallas area. You continue to get those kind of players on your roster. You build a rapport like the Dallas area kids all know each other. That's tight. I imagine it's pretty much the same with Houston. That matters. Kiffin and his staff, I don't know which guys have connections to Texas. I imagine there's a few in the back office or whatever, but this is major news. We'll see if the Rebels end up signing Chase Calicut But just the fact that they're in the Final Three for a North Shore kid, that has cachet to it. You cannot discount that. Now, let's talk a little portal. As of me doing this podcast, at least I haven't seen it. Maybe it happened and I just missed it before I went to record. But A.J. Halsey, the star safety that was at Houston, hadn't made a decision yet. He's supposed to be visiting Miami, last I heard. I don't know how long the visit's going to last. I don't know the circumstance. All I do know is that it's LSU, Ole Miss, and Miami. We'll see where he goes. But if somehow LSU doesn't get him, Miami doesn't get him, and he goes to Ole Miss, you already got Wyatt Williams coming in from ULM, and you already got Tavoy Fagan and some other guys coming in to help the defensive backfield. This is a team, if they get Halsey, you are going to look at Ole Miss differently because the back end of the defense cost them sometimes last year. Whether it was that player making a misread or not lining somebody else up, they needed to take a step forward. Here's what you need to know about Halsey. You're talking about a kid who started every game in his college career, who's extremely durable. He's played 3 years, always plays, and he's a guy that can play in the box or deep. And oh, by the way, he's 215. He's very productive. He had over 70 tackles. Wyatt Williams, if I remember right, had over 90. But they're going to try and make it work through the portal. And it's not normally how you'd want to do it, to build a roster to go for a title run. But having Simmons, the skill talent that Ole Miss does, they just really needed to fix that back end. I think the defensive front seven, which they built through the high school ranks mostly in the state of Mississippi, you're trending in the right direction there. Matter of fact, you're more than trending. You're headed in a very good direction. I love some of the guys that got Big Xavier and some of those players up front on the defensive line. And, of course, Sunterian Perkins is the eraser. But now you're starting to get serious talent in the back end. Halsey is the final missing piece. That's an NFL football player. We'll see. Miami's going to throw a major amount of cash at him. They sucked in their secondary last year. They were garbage. That should never happen at Miami, but it did. I imagine Mario is just trying to fix this with cash. They tried to do the same thing last year, and they couldn't stop anything, but we'll see. I think I could coach Halsey at this point because, I mean, he's so productive. This could be the missing piece for Ole Miss, and I'm really anxious to see where he ends up going. When we come back, going to have a long discussion about what has happened, talking about last year, Ole Miss not making the playoff, the reasons behind it, teams that did, and some rule changes that are being discussed that are going to have major implications on whether or not the SEC changes from 8 to 9 conference games, how teams schedule differently. There's a lot of stuff going on that we need to discuss. That is next here on Locked On Ole Miss. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer. And the last-minute deals can actually save you up to 60%. Here's an example of why Gametime makes it easy. This isn't just about the NBA playoffs. This is deals on the Gametime app across the board. It could be comedy, could be a theater, could be you going to the movies. It could be about anything. You can get up to 60% off with last-minute ticket deals on Gametime. Plus, there's all-in pricing. So when you see the price at the beginning, unlike at some stores I've been to in my life, where you go to the counter and the price is different, it is all-inclusive pricing from the get-go. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So did you like the playoff format? Before I even get into the questions, I just want you to think about this before I really, really dive in. Did you like the playoff format? What didn't you like? What changes would you make? I want you to be just constantly let that ruminate where would you make the changes first? There's a lot of ways you can go about this. It's complex. But here are a couple of things before I ask some of the questions that I have, and I'll answer them too for you. Number one, there's the discussion about going to 14, and I think that's happening, but I don't trust anything that's said until it's done, because going to 14 could quickly go to 16. Like, they changed their mind on stuff so much. I just want to get that out there. Secondarily, this year coming up, they're going to keep the same rules on how it works with the first 4 seeds. It's dumb because there's no way on God's green earth, no offense, but Boise State is not a top 4 seed. They're not. They're not close. But that'll be around for this year too. After this year, that's probably going to go by the wayside. So, for instance, at the end of the year, if 2 teams from the SEC meet in Atlanta and they were 1-2 in the polls, and it's 24-21, well, the number 2 team, let's say they lost by 3 to the number 1 team, they might drop to number 4 or 5, but because they didn't win the league, that doesn't mean you can't be top 4. They would be in it. This coming season, that may not be the case. There's a lot of problems with that, and I think they realize it, especially, no offense, again, Boise State had a miraculous year last year, but that's going out the window. That's first. Finally here, you got to look at it from a totality standpoint. Were they happy with the playoff games? To a certain degree, but there were a lot of blowouts still, which everybody said was coming, but nobody wanted to hear it. Oh, we're getting in the playoff. A lot of teams got their head beat in, even Tennessee. It's not that easy. So every little spot you move up does matter. Do you think Tennessee would have rather played anybody but Ohio State? Of course. Part of that's on them. Part of that's on Ohio State for choking against Michigan. There's some weird stuff, but Ohio State could have been a top 5 seed in a different scenario, and then Tennessee would have played maybe Boise State. Whatever the case may be, that'll get fixed come 2026. 2025 will be another weird year. It is what it is. Now, direct questions that Ole Miss fans have discussed, and I just want your take on this, is, again, we're trying to focus on this upcoming fall by using retroactive points. Indiana went 11-1 against a weak schedule, played competitively against Ohio State for about a quarter, and then they just got rolled. Ohio State didn't play well that day offensively, but their defense beat the bejesus out of Indiana. I watched that game from second quarter on. I'm like, this is awful. They can't get any movement, etc. Now, Ohio State was obviously incredibly talented, but I'm like, no. If they would have played a more normal Big Ten schedule, they just the way it fell, they didn't play Oregon. They didn't play Penn State. Michigan was down, and they played Michigan earlier in the year before they really started to grow. And they only beat Michigan by like a touchdown. That was the week that Michigan started to play a little better. They'd have played them at the end of the year, Michigan probably would have beat them. Do you look at schedule the same way, especially after that? Because sometimes it happens in the SEC too, where a team kind of misses everybody. Like, I was talking to Mr. Miller today from Locked On Mizzou. Look, man, they don't play Texas this upcoming year. They don't play LSU. They missed several of the big name schools. It's not the same for everybody. Look at Oklahoma's schedule. Holy moly. They're not getting the short end of the deal. They're just getting thrown off the cliff. So it matters. So now bring Ole Miss into it. You're 9-3 last year, and there's some arguments to be made for them. But, I mean, I've even talked to Ole Miss fans, and of course, it's, Stephen Willis follows Ole Miss close as he can possibly do it, and there's probably not a host on the Locked On Network that's closer to the team that he follows than Stephen. You just can't lose to Kentucky at home. To me, that was the difference. It's one thing like that they beat Georgia, but then you lost to Kentucky at home. I think that was, I'm pretty sure that was UK's only win in the SEC. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So how do you rank that stuff? Should Indiana, that's the schedule they were given because the Big Ten kind of flipped around with the new additions with the Oregon and all that. The West Coast trip they had to make wasn't Oregon, SC, or Washington. It was UCLA. Stomped them. How do you grade that? And what does the committee have to do to get it better? Because Indiana, I thought, should be in, but not. But where are they? Like, they weren't one of the teams that really should have been even, I don't know, maybe they shouldn't have been in. But who do you put in replacement? Like South Carolina was inconsistent. They should have beat Bama, by the way. Obviously, Ole Miss screwed themselves by losing to Kentucky. That's a couple of them. Then Bama is the weirdest team. They didn't even show up against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was garbage. The SEC last year was odd. Let's just start with that. But how do you make this work? It's not easy, folks. It's not easy at all. So I want your comments on Locked On Ole Miss on the YouTube page because there's been a lot of talk about it, but I don't think there's a clear-cut answer sometimes. The only thing I know is, and thank God for this, in 2026, the seeding will be different. There aren't going to be automatic bids to those top 4 seats per conference. That'll go away. They'll vote that out because it's obvious you can't have Boise State as a top 4 seed. Amen to that. Second question. This is one I'm not going to spend much time on like I did Indiana, but quarterback injuries. Let's use Florida State from a couple of years ago. You lose your signal caller at the end of the year, you're probably screwed. Take away the Ohio State 2014 thing. That was weird. They won it with a third-string quarterback. That'll never happen again. Does a team lose some kind of, is it arbitrary? Is it guaranteed? How do you do that when a quarterback gets hurt? It's going to happen again. I mean, like South Carolina's goes 11-1 this year, but when Lenora Sellers gets hurt against Clemson before the SEC title game, they're in a lot of trouble. Guarantee you they ain't winning the title game, A. And B, are they really going to make a run in the playoff without him? Probably not. Most teams need somebody that's taken all the reps at quarterback. It is a reps position like no other in sport, not just football. How do you do that? I don't have a steadfast answer on this, but I just know that there's really no good way to replace Jordan Travis for Florida State, for instance, or any other big-time quarterback. It would be the same thing. If Austin Simmons went down, do I feel good? No. Ole Miss would be one of the few teams that has a backup. They've went out and got a couple of guys, obviously. Mr. Ferris State, national champion, played a lot. And they have a couple other guys on the roster, very talented. They would at least be good, but it's still not the same as having a starter. Third, here's the one that's funky. Urban Meyer's talked about this and several other people. Urban said goodbye to these future games that we've got scheduled that are out of conference before the conference slate start. He's probably right because they don't value strength of schedule enough on the playoff committee. But especially out of conference, why would you play them if they worry more about the loss column than they do the quality of wins? It's not wrong. You can argue about a lot of things that Urban said, what have you, about recruiting or this, that, or the other. That one's just wholeheartedly, I agree with it. It's hard for me to understand how you could remotely argue against that. If you, for instance, Oklahoma this year, Lord only knows how many years ago this was scheduled. Second game of the year, OU hosts Michigan. On top of the SEC slate they have, which is brutal. There's no way, knowing what they know now, they would want any part of that game. Zero. It's not even the point of whether they can win it. It's just the physical attrition that your team takes, even if you do win, before you go into the SEC slate. Pretty rough. So I think we're going to see far fewer games out of conference that are meaningful, which brings me to another point here in a minute about the 8-9. Just remember I said that. We'll come back to that in a second. Is there a better format than what the SEC is doing with the 8-9 or with the playoff in general? Like, you could talk about it from either perspective, so let's just do both. I want it to be 9 games for the SEC, but everybody I don't know how Oklahoma got their schedule, Missouri got there. It's still, even though you're in the same week, like it shouldn't be that it's too disjointed. That's A. And B, you have to be honest about it. To that point, there's a tier to this, man. Like Georgia, Texas, Alabama, those 3 are different. For most years, LSU too. Let's not kid ourselves. That's different. If you have a schedule with more than 2 of those, why? Florida, but they have a normal coach, probably in that boat as well. Tennessee has been over time. But Georgia, Bama, LSU, Texas. If you have more than 2 of those on your schedule and you're an SEC head coach at another program, you should be screaming. Why? They got to make it more fair on their own league. It's dumb. Those schools recruit better than the others. It's just true. So they got to figure that out. When we come back on Locked On Ole Miss, going to continue this discussion a little more in depth about some of my opinions, including one about Lane Kiffin that I think is hurting the Rebels. That is next here on Locked On Ole Miss. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting very easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into a player prop that you like. For instance, 3-pointers, steals, assists. You could use rebounds and, of course, baseball, strikeouts, number of hits, home runs, RBIs. There's a lot of ways you could do it. And even if you don't get your bet in before the game begins, you could do player prop bets with live betting. So don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right. Do the big box schools receive more chances? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm pretty sure most people know the thought process where it's leaning, but there was a bit of a misnomer to that this past season with the playoff, as Bama didn't get picked. If Bama would have got picked, there would have been a lot of consternation because they didn't lose to Oklahoma at the end of the year. They were blasted. It was 24-3. I watched quite a bit of that game. They didn't even want to be there. I don't know what the deal was, but Kalen DeBoer did not have his team ready to play. Bama went 9-3. They beat Georgia, lost to Oklahoma. That's not a good look, by the way. But that's something that over time, I think more often than not, you can use Texas in that spot or Georgia, Florida. The TV networks run this deal. They want those teams in. Now, they're not going to make any prognostications here. They're not going to announce, hey, we want UGA. Hey, we want LSU. Hey, we want the Horns. Hey, we want Aggies. Certain schools have massive fan bases. Massive. And they got oil money. You know, like LSU and Texas A&M, they got oil money. It's different. Some of those boosters, they'll come in to a playoff game. They'll buy out a whole hotel. Not a low end one, a high end one. That's what they want. And the eyeballs on the TV, it's good for them too. So the local market wins, the restaurants and the hotels, and the TV wins. That's what they want. So I ask again, do some of the big box schools get an advantage? Florida Gators, Georgia Bulldogs, etc., from the SEC, Michigan Wolverines, Oregon Ducks. Do you think they get an edge? Well, as we go over time, let's say 5 years, maybe 10 with the college football playoff. I'm still going to say yes, and they'll try to lie about it, but TV will have an influence. And I think that hurts Ole Miss. To that point, how does Ole Miss improve their chances? Because they don't fit the big box. They don't. They're a great story. They're a team right below that tier, but they don't have the same alumni base, and they certainly don't have the oil money. Mississippi's not an oil state. How do they change some of that? And I think the answer for me, and you all can say whatever you want, the easiest answer is you've got to win some games that you're not supposed to. You got to punch somebody in the mouth and knock them out. Georgia on the road, I talked about that a couple of times on some shows a few weeks ago. Got to punch them in the mouth. You got to win not just like go to the SEC. They need to win the SEC. They've got to do something that is thought to be not possible at Ole Miss. Beat the odds. If I'm wrong, but that's my take. Now, to that point, there is something else talking about bias that I think really hurts Ole Miss. And this is person to person, but everybody has their human side. And this thought that committees aren't going to be biased is garbage. Everybody is biased. Period. Everybody. It doesn't have to be politics to be biased. It can be a local economy. It could be a local Little League team. Anything has politics in it. To that point, there's a certain coach in the SEC that Ole Miss fans know well that you either love him or you hate him. His name is Lane Kiffin. I think that having Kiffin at Ole Miss does not help Ole Miss get to the playoff because so many people dislike him. And I'm not just talking about Tennessee fans or SC fans, whatever, just in general. The people I know in media either love him or absolutely cuss him. There's no in between. Some of those people are going to be on the playoff committee. It's just human nature. Now, they may not talk about that when they have discussion, but in any given year that Ole Miss is on the cusp of making the playoff, there's a chance, just by pot luck, because the committee changes, that the Rebels don't make it in because it's pretty close between the Rebels and some other team. I don't know. Maybe it's Clemson one year, whatever. But they don't like Lane Kiffin, so they vote for the other school. Don't think that that's not a possibility. What I do like, and this is smart on Lane Kiffin's part, here recently he's went around on some podcasts. He's been a lot more open and just hanging out, more easygoing. That's going to help him. That's going to help Ole Miss. This is a popularity contest, whether you want it to be or whether you agree about it or not. It is 100% a popularity contest. TV networks will like that too, by the way. Just saying. So how can Ole Miss improve Lane Kiffin's image even more? Continue what they're doing. Continue what they're doing. Lane has to have people come. Like, if he could get on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I'm not kidding, it would be huge. And Rogan would love to do it, probably. That guy is the biggest podcaster in the world right now. Get on that show. By the way, he's in Austin, Texas. That wouldn't hurt recruiting either. Doing things like that, just having fun, talking about football, talking about Southern hospitality, what it's like to coach in the SEC, all that stuff, it's going to promote your program. I'm not saying that he can just call Joe Rogan up and schedule a meeting so they can sit down for his 3-hour podcast. Joe does really long pods. But there's got to be a way to at least do something like that. It's the off season. Make it work. I don't care if it's a Tuesday afternoon, fly in, fly out, make it work. Your image matters. And again, this isn't my opinion. This is people I know that are in media. Some have voting rights and different things. Love him or hate him. I've never met somebody that was neutral on Lane Kiffin. So take that however you want. Final question here as we wrap up Locked on Ole Miss. The college football playoff rule changes that need to be made the most. This is more of a just reiterating what I talked about earlier. Number one, it sounds like it's going to happen to top 4 seeds. That stuff's just dumb. If Boise State makes the top 4 seed again this year, I'm going to have a revolt. No offense. Or somebody like, no. They're not in the same stratosphere, especially in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball, as what even, to be honest, most of the ACC and Big 12 schools are. Not all, but most. On top of that, I mean, you had an all-world running back, Boise last year. He's duped. But that doesn't mean that one of these teams can't go 11-1, 12-0 this year, playing a G5 schedule, and get voted up there. And then they go, I don't know, they play Notre Dame or Ohio State or Oregon or something that first game. Good luck. You know, I don't care where they play that game at. They can play it in the president of Boise State's backyard. It ain't going to matter. They're going to get punked. They can't have that team a top 4. Secondarily, there's been discussion about home games in round 2. Just let me make this statement. I grew up in Indiana, and it's cool. Like Notre Dame had a home game, and it worked out pretty good against Indiana. At least it wasn't a Southern school. But there's going to be a time, like at some point down the road, like Michigan State will make the playoff. If they ever host one, I'm going to tell you right now, even an early December game, and this is going to be around the 20th, in East Lansing, it could be 5 inches of snow, blowing sideways, and negative temperatures. No. That's round 1. What do you think round 2 is going to be? They're going to have to come up with some ideas if they ever want to go that route. And even if they continue with one round, it's going to happen sooner or later where they're going to have to move a home campus game to some place like Detroit for the Lions. They've got a dome, and or they go to Indianapolis. It's one or the other. It's unfortunate, but I know some people want a round 2, but it just doesn't work at most of northern schools because it's just not safe for travel, And then you got, dumb students are going to want to go, not dress right and get, hypothermia or something stupid. But I digress. Anyway, thank you once again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen each and every day. Please like and subscribe. We will see you again soon here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.